Just over 12 months ago now, I sat down beside a Christmas tree and recorded my very first YouTube video on the Krampus. Now, I don't mind telling you that that particular video, which was only about 3 minutes long, took me far too long to create because I was new at making videos and I was quite nervous in front of the camera, and I was constantly making mistakes and totally getting my lines wrong. The camera I was using wasn't great and there was no external microphone, but I'm really quite proud of that little episode simply because it was my first, and looking back upon it, I can see that I'm actually quite nervous in the video. And if you look closely at the jacket that I was wearing, which I bought that very day for the video, I'd left my price tag attached to it, and I only realised after I had finished the video and packed up all the equipment. So I thought that it would make for a great blooper one day, and I just decided to just leave it in there and not worry too much about it. Here's that clip. The season of goodwill. He's interested in cruelty and punishment, and his name is the Krampus. Over the past year, I've released many more videos and I've enjoyed creating every single one of them, and watching my subscribers grow gradually has really been a blast, and the really nice comments that I've received off you guys have really been heartwarming. And although the channel is still small, I am extremely proud of what we have built, and I say we because without the support of you guys, it just wouldn't be worth it, so thank you very much. So today I thought I'd answer a few of your questions that you sent me through Instagram and hopefully give you a bit of insight into the process of making an episode and why I love bringing you these bizarre tales. Okay, question number one. So what brought you into starting a podcast? So some of you will know this, but some of you may not. Bizarre Tales is also a podcast that started off as Bizarre Podcast. And I recently renamed the podcast and the YouTube channel to Bizarre Tales. And when I created the YouTube channel originally, it was called Bizarre Podcast TV, and I decided this just didn't sound right, and I made the decision to change both the podcast and YouTube channel to Bizarre Tales to keep them both an identical brand. For many years, I'd listened to many podcasts ranging from the unexplained, mysterious universe and lore, so you can probably see a connection between what I'm doing and those podcasts. They were really a big influence. One of my favourite podcasts at that time that Kevin Smith presented was Fat Man on Batman. Now, I'm a massive Batman fan, and I just fell in love with this show instantly. And every now and again, Kevin Smith would say to the listener, if you have a voice and something to say, you can make a podcast. And for some reason, this really appealed to me. And I was at that stage in my life where I really needed a hobby to really get lost in, and so I created Bizarre Podcast. And so I made a very rough logo that was awful, and I recorded my very first episode directly into my mobile phone, and very roughly strung up a few stories and released my very first episode on cursed objects. And then I bought a cheap microphone and recorded even more episodes, and eventually I got the bug. Now, unfortunately, it wasn't all smooth sailing. I had a little moment of self-doubt and I deleted the podcast, but that really didn't last long. I shook all that ugly self-doubt away and I ordered myself an expensive microphone, got myself a better logo for the podcast made by someone who could do a much better job than I ever could, and I re-uploaded the show and dived right back in with some bigger episodes here and there, testing the waters with my content, and I haven't really looked back since. And eventually I decided I would move over to YouTube. Okay, the next question. Have you ever seen anything unexplained that freaked you out? Now, this is a tricky one for me because I have experienced things in the past like seeing a UFO in the sky or seeing a ghost or hearing a ghost, but I must admit that most of the things I have experienced, I can't say that I'm 100% sure they were all paranormal, but they did leave me wondering. But I always debunked my experiences in my head and I found a rational explanation for them. However, there was a time when I was staying at a bed and breakfast and I believe I saw something that I was so sure was real, it didn't even enter my mind that it may have been paranormal. So I had been out all day and I was walking back towards the bed and breakfast, and I noticed in the very top window of the bed and breakfast there was a little girl who had lifted the net curtain and was waving at me. So naturally, I waved back, and then my concentration went towards the road that I was crossing, and when I looked back at the window, the little girl had gone. Now, I thought nothing of this, and when I entered the bed and breakfast, I bumped into the lady who owned the business, and after exchanging a few pleasantries, I mentioned the little girl in the window on the top floor. Now, the lady who owned the bed and breakfast, she looked puzzled and a bit creeped out as she informed me that there wasn't anyone on the top floor in that room, and she insisted I accompany her up to the room to inspect the room. and it was just as she said, the room was empty. Now the thing is, I was 100% certain that I had waved at a little girl in that window. I was 100% certain that I had seen a little girl waving at me. And when I was told that the room was empty, I actually went out of the B&B and showed her the actual room from outside, just to make sure that we hadn't got the rooms confused when we went into the building and went to the actual room. And it turned out that was a room that was empty. There was no family in there, there was no little girl in there. So after that day, naturally, I tried to debunk what I had seen, or what I thought I had seen, and all I could come up with was that maybe it was due to the sun either shining in my eyes or reflecting off the glass of the window. But to this day, I'm not 100% sure. And apparently the lady who runs a bed and breakfast is now creeped out when she cleans the top room. Okay, the next question is, do you believe in aliens? I do, actually. I do. Based on probability alone, I think that when you take into account how big the universe actually is, which is just mind-blowing and hard to imagine, I mean, we can only see as far as light has travelled, and when you take that into account and the amount of stars in the sky, which is more than every grain of sand on the planet, there has just got to be life somewhere out there. And that I don't just mean microscopic life. I have no doubt that there must be intelligent life somewhere out there. There's just got to be, and I can't imagine that we are alone in this universe, but will we ever prove intelligent life? Probably not. I hope so in my lifetime, but probably not. And again, if this does ever happen, I really hope that the aliens are friendly, like E.T. Okay, the next question. Have you ever found something really disturbing that you wish you had never come across? Albert Fish, without a doubt, most definitely the most disturbing thing I've ever come across is Albert Fish, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. The first time I delved into that case, which you can watch right here, by the way, the first time I delved into that case, my eyes welled up. I actually cried whilst researching this story, because Albert Fish was a very, very evil man who killed children, and all of the Albert Fish story is very deeply disturbing. It's all very sad and very twisted. But there was one particular part of the story I found hard to get through, and that is the part of the story where he sends a letter to the mother of a little girl that he had killed and described in detail exactly what he did to her. It hit me hard. That episode was the hardest episode I've ever researched and recorded. It really brought me down, learning about this man's horrific evil crimes. But I think because I also felt so strongly about it, I think it came across in the episode, and it is probably one of my best. And I know it was received really well by the listeners, who said I approached it in a respectful way, which I've really appreciated to hear. Because there was actually parts in that episode where I had to read Albert's letters out, and it disturbed me so much that I changed my voice when I was saying these words. I actually changed my voice in the audio and the editing. Now I'm going to read to you the letter. This is exactly what the letter said. In his own words, this letter is not pleasant to listen to, and believe me, it's not pleasant to read. I may decide to change the sound of my voice for this next bit, not to create a creepy atmosphere, but simply, I'm not comfortable reading this letter and having other people hear it in my voice. I hope that makes sense. Here it is.
My dear Mrs. Budd, in 1894 a friend of mine shipped as a deckhand on the steamer Tacoma, Captain John Davis. They sailed from San Francisco to Hong Kong, China. On arriving there, he and two others went ashore and got drunk. When they returned, the boat was gone. At that time there was a famine in China. Meat of any kind was from $1 to $3 a pound. So great was the suffering among the very poor that all the children under 12 were sold for food in order to keep others from starving. A boy or girl under 14 was not safe in the street. You could go in any...
So yeah, the Albert Fish case will always be one episode that really did leave a mark on me and really did bring me down, and it was really hard to get through. Next question, how about more true stories on phenomenon, I always have trouble with that word, phenomenon, that you haven't covered before? Absolutely. There are so many stories out there that I can cover, and I'm excited to do so and bring them to you. For me, number one, it's got to be interesting. And I think a lot of people who found the podcast have an impression that I just cover the paranormal. But for me, the podcast and YouTube channel has to be so much more. And that's why I named the show Bizarre Tales instead of, I don't know, Ghostly Tales or Paranormal Tales, because I don't want to be tied down to one or two particular categories. I want to cover whatever stories interest me, like crime, mysteries, dark histories, heartwarming stories of human nature, strange coincidences, and of course, the paranormal. So before I go, I just want to say one more time, thanks very much for all the support and all the kindness that I've received from you guys, and I look forward to bringing you so much more bizarre tales over the next year. So take care, and I'll see you very soon. Bye bye.